To the committee, please, sir.
Sorry, Chair. It's a member Brankesh. I did already introduce myself.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and all the members of the committee. Caleb Kassam, Acting CEO of Eskom. I'm accompanied by my colleague Becky Namalo and from the Head of Generation, and Isabel Fick from our System Operator, also accompanied by our Group Regulatory Affairs Acting Executive Sumaya Nasib. Honourable Chairperson, you just advise when we can start.
Thank you, Mr. Kassam. I'm just checking to see if there's anything up here quickly. Later, since he's attending a cabinet meeting. Therefore, Mr. Kassam, if you could continue with your presentation, please, sir.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll ask Sumaya to flight our presentation. I will do the first two introductory slides, and then the detailed presentation on the technicalities will be covered by Becky Namalo, and Head of Generation, also supported by Isabel Fick around the system operations. Thank you, members, for the opportunity. If I then start, in terms of the executive summary, as Eskom has presented last week to the media in terms of the winter plan and our outlook we see for the next three months for the remaining period, it is going to be a difficult winter. We have done a number of scenarios as the system operator, and really, honourable members, it focuses on how can we limit our unplanned outages to less than 15,000. By implication, it means the levels of load shedding would decrease and be at much lower levels. And we've done permutations between 15,000, 16,500 and 18,000. As we've indicated, in the event that we do get to 18,000 as unplanned, the likelihood of load shedding being above stage 6 to stage 8 increases. However, it must be acknowledged as well, as we've answered, 18,000 does not automatically mean stage 8 load shedding. The system operator has emergency reserves available to them in the form of our OCGTs, open cycle gas turbines, both Eskom's and the IPPs, together with our dams in terms of our pump storage. And once those emergency reserves are depleted, which if the performance of generation doesn't improve, then that higher stages beyond stage 6 then increases. But we are doing everything in our capabilities as generation and the system operator to manage the system. What we will highlight in this presentation, honorable members, is that we have a competent system operator team that's been managing this tight grid for the last 3 years. We are confident that the likelihood of a national blackout is very minimal. As I've been quoted, that I'm not losing sleep in terms of a national blackout. I do stress, however, on load shedding higher than stage 6, and Becky will touch on what recovery plans generation is doing to keep it to stage 6 or lower. In doing so, Honorable Chairperson, what we are doing besides the unplanned losses, it's important that we also deal with our maintenance, and we limit maintenance during this winter period to the bare minimum. We are going to keep it anything between 1,500 and 3,000 megawatts. And then we utilize much higher OCGTs, up to 20% load factor during the winter period. And thereafter it will drop. As we've only have a limited budget for Eskom in terms of 20 billion for our plants and another 10 billion for the IPP plants. Becky will explain the recovery plan of generation over the next 24 months. And importantly, in stabilizing with the head of generation, he's also allocated more senior power station managers to important plants in terms of our portfolio. And we are already seeing that some of those benefits come through, in particular with the Tutuka plant, where we've seen 3 units operating, whereas in the recent past, we've been struggling to just have 1 unit online. However, over and above what Eskom can do to control the supply and demand balance, it's important that a combination of trying to manage the peak through demand side initiatives supported by industry, commercial entities, and the public. That is also an important contributing factor. And last but not least, the more megawatts we can add to the grid through a combination of IPPs and self-generation initiatives will go a long way to balancing supply and demand. Acknowledging that Eskom, in terms of the transmission grid, needs to relieve some of the constraints that we have seen and are encountering on the transmission side. If I then move to the next slide, Honorable Chair. What has been positive, I think first and foremost, establishment of NECOM, obviously, and appointment of the Minister of Electricity, the support we're getting from the President, the Minister of Electricity, and the NECOM has been tremendous. There are many work streams that we are diligently working on addressing the electricity crisis that the country is facing. So there are positive developments there. We currently also, through these initiatives, engaging very importantly with the Department of Fisheries, Forestries and Environmental Affairs, in particular around the recovery of the 3 units at Kusile. We're busy constructing those temporary stacks. That is progressing very positively. You will see in the presentation that our intention is to have those 3 stacks completed by the end of November into December. So then we can generate from those temporary stacks, obviously with the approvals from the necessary department. in terms of the emissions and air quality requirements. We can then look to see 500 odd megawatts coming from each of those units come end of this calendar year, coupled with an additional commissioning of Unit 5 at Kusile. Positively, the combination of the NERSA tariff decision for this financial year of the 18% and 12% next financial year, and importantly, what was granted in the budget speech of the Minister of Finance, the debt relief of the 254 billion, has put Eskom in a position where we can now release the necessary capex for generation, transmission, and distribution in advance. We've done that for the next 3 years, chairperson and members. We have not been in this position for the last 7 years. That then allows, in particular, generation to go and procure the necessary spares and even transmission and distribution to do what is required in terms of capital expenditure. I think it's important to also note that the amount of capital expenditure allocated to the divisions has increased on the back of that combination of financial support for Eskom, and that will then address the necessary requirements from an operational perspective. Yes, we must acknowledge, and my colleague Becky Nomalo is going to address the deteriorated EAF performance in terms of we've only managed to achieve 52% at the end of March 2023. Our objective is to improve that to 65% by March 2024 and 70% by March 2025. And Becky will explain those recovery plans in more detail. Last but not least, as also the Minister of DMRE announced in his budget speech, the importance of additional bid windows, be it renewables, as well as the gas program coming online and being connected to the transmission grid, appreciating that we must do our part on the transmission side. Chairperson, if we then move on into more detail, I'll now hand over to the head of generation, Becky Nomalo, to take the committee through the details. Thank you. Becky, over to you.
Chair, Isabella will deal with this first few slides and then I will come in on the rest on generation. Isabella?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Becky. So if we look at the winter outlook, it has a very significant demand versus supply imbalance. The reasons we have reiterated and will a number of times during the presentation. The biggest problem on the capacity side is that we have lost the units at Kusile, units 1 to 3, and that currently Koeberg unit 1 is under a prolonged outage. And this obviously will be sustained throughout the winter period. Then we also have a lot of unplanned outages, as you can see on the slide there, which gives rise to 3 different scenarios for the winter period, and I'll get into that a little bit later. We expect a peak demand for the winter period between 33 and 34,000 megawatts for the winter. And our supply currently is around 26. So you can see we are sitting with a deficit of around 6,500 megawatts. What I do want to emphasize is that does not automatically mean stage 6, as Kalib has also said, that even if we are in a 18,000 unplanned outage situation, we could still not necessarily be in a stage 8. The reason for that is that we actually have a number of levers that we use to lower the demand at any particular time. So it really depends on what the state of the network is and what the availability of these other resources and levers are for us to then determine the specific stage of load shedding. Can we move to the next slide, please? So as I said, it's all about capacity and demand, and I have mentioned most of the items on this slide already, so I will not bore you. If you look at the difference between the 2 years, it's basically the same situation this year than it was last year, with the exception of the units that we've lost over the course of the year and that are not available. We have made some inroads with regards to demand response and DSM efforts. So to bring down the demand, we also utilize the power alert, which I'm sure all of you are aware of, and that flights on main during the peak periods on the television screens at night. We can move on, please. This is the outlook that we see for the winter period. Now, this is a slide I need to stand still a little bit and explain. In the colored circles, you will see the expected stage of load shedding. And in the column just preceding that, you will see the number of days. So essentially what we do is we take the capacity plan, which is the overall plan of all the outages that is expected during the winter period. It is also informed by some trending analysis in terms of what we see in terms of the unplanned outages. And then when we take that plan, we stress test the plan. So essentially the plan of the base case would be equal to the capacity plan. We then look at the different scenarios of unplanned unavailability. For this winter, we start the base case with 15,000 megawatts unplanned unavailability. And we stress it to the worst case scenario being 18,000 unplanned unavailability. What I need to tell you at this stage is that during the course of every single day, we move between these scenarios multiple times. It is a dynamic system, and therefore it's not a case that we stand still in one specific area for the whole day, because things come off and things come on to the network as we talk. So it is dynamic. The numbers reflected on the screen is your maximum stage of load shedding in a particular day. And that maximum also would typically fall in the winter period over the evening peak, because the evening peak is higher, and you may or may not know, but during the winter period, we have a load profile that has a very high morning peak and a very high evening peak with a valley in between. During the summer months, it's more of a plateau, although you still have peaks, but not so distinctive. So the worst case scenario, and I think that's where all the emphasis is at the moment, is if we do experience very high levels of unplanned unavailability, we then expect load shedding just about every single day, as you can see by the days indicated there, and ranging up to a stage 8. It does not mean that we will definitely get to stage 8, but it means that there is a possibility, and a fairly high possibility, that we may get there. Let's move on. Next slide. So there's multiple levers that are being pulled, and I think this is the point where Becky will take over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sumaya. Good afternoon, Honorable Chairperson and members. Yeah, I think Caleb and Sumaya have now plotted the situation we are faced with as we start as well. I need to indicate that this winter is actually quite different for us as well. One of the key issues which makes it difficult is that we are, for the first time, going through the whole winter without a unit at Quebec. As the members might be aware, that we are busy with the steam generator replacement project there. And then, unfortunately, to top that one up, we have lost 3 units at Kusile, which make it then that we're going through this winter without that 3,080 megawatts that we would normally have. But we have then focused on some of the key issues. I think the critical issue is to ensure that we minimize these stages of load shedding based on the scenarios that the system operator have just outlined now, that we stay. Must also indicate that anything above stage 4 is still seen as high stages, but we are trying to limit at this stage so that we don't go beyond stage 6, given the shortfall that we are having. So we have had those units that we were planned to return before this winter. I must report that all of them have returned. They are currently producing, so which is also helping us to try and minimize the impact of the risk going towards that stage 7 and 8 that the system operator talked to. Then the maintenance part, Caleb did touch on it, that currently we will have a minimum up to around 3,000 with mainly Quebec and the unit at Kendall and Drakensberg. Then there will be some short-term maintenance that we will be doing, but on the major maintenance, it's going to be kept to a minimum. The open cyclic gas turbine, Caleb touched on it. We're planning for this winter month to run them around 20% as well. So our teams down there in the Western Cape have put in the plans as well in terms of our logistics, especially for the Ankelech plant where we're doing a lot of trucking. So Horikwa is not so much of a logistic because there is a pipeline also, but we're planning to have them at around 20% for this winter months. And then our colleagues also from distribution, they are also together with the government aggressively addressing the issue of demand side management, because we are looking at all the levers to make sure that the system does not get into a catastrophic level. Although we appreciate the impact of the current load shedding to the economy, but the demand side management is one of the levers that we believe, if we're correctly applied as well, it can cushion the system from total collapse. Let's move on to the next slide. Yeah, just to apprise the committee on this one, just to talk to the units that I spoke to that are down currently this winter, we should be running. We have Quebec that is currently down for the steam generator. We plan to return it by end of September, in September. Yeah, we have had some challenges there, but we are now towards the tail end of the steam generator replacement projects, and we still need to do some maintenance as well before this unit can be returned safely. And then I did talk to Kusile 1, 2, and 3, but on top of that, we still got Kusile 5. Kusile 5 is one of the units that is has not been synchronized. It's a new unit, so we're planning to have by end of December all three of the 3 plus 1 new one coming in as well. That should give us some breathing space as well from the summer months of this year. And then the next unit that I want to report on is the Medupi Unit 4. That is the unit that had a failure. So that was an explosion on the generator there. So we are pushing to have that unit by next year, July. So that will sort of then, as part of this broader 2-year plan that we are dealing with as well. Let's move on to the next one. So this is currently what is being approved. The Caleb touched on it to say there is a board-approved strategy on the recovery of generation to say by March next year, we should be at 65%. That should see that huge reduction now on this current status of load shedding. And then by 25 March, we should be at 70%. That's what we are currently driving, Chairperson and committee members to deal with that. So there's 3 things that we are dealing with now. There's 6 stations that have been prioritized within generation to be looked at. Tutuga Power Station, Duva, Majuba, Kusile, Matla, and Kenda. So at Tutuga, maybe to start, that was one of our best performing plant over the past 2-3 years or so. So what we have done already now, beginning of this month, we have put one of our experienced power station managers to manage that plant. We are starting to see some stability as already, but yeah, it's still a long time until they get all these 6 units running. So, but I'm quite positive that with the interventions we are doing there, we will see some good performance. Duva as well is showing some improvement signs. So is Majuba. So I think there we focus remains on those 6 stations to make sure that we pull as much energy from those ones. Then there are stations that we are also trying to protect that are, the stations that are good for the system. the likes of Quebec, the likes of Medupi. I must say Medupi is running extremely well, except for that unit that failed about a year ago. The 5 remaining units are currently giving a good energy of above 95% availability, and it's been consistently doing so well. I think the committee will remember Medupi didn't start well after the first initial years of commissioning. So, but currently Medupi is now becoming one of our flagship stations, running exceptionally well. So we are also taking lessons from there to Kusile. So as the unit at Kusile gonna return, so we want to start emulating what is happening at Medupi as well. Okay, and then the focus on the long term obviously is that Medupi 4, and then the second unit at Quebec need to come off later this year, so that we also do the steam replacement as well, because as you know that the Quebec license ends next year, July, so we need to have this, especially for Unit 1, we need to have this steam generator replaced as part of the long-term operations of Quebec. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, I think I did touch on some of these things in terms of what we are doing. The issue of leadership, we started with the power station management level. So I must say now we have actually appointed all the power stations now have got power station managers, and then with the movement that we have done as well. And then we are also focusing on critical vacancies. That is also being supported by the crowdsourcing that we are doing. So these are the people that used to work for us in Eskom and those who work in the industry who've got heavy industry skills experience. We are getting through this crowdsourcing experience on top of the normal recruitment that we are doing from within Eskom as well. And then there's some specific skills as well. There is through the NICOM structure that Caleb referred to. There is industry that has come forward to propose where they can support us, and we have identified specific areas where the private industry can come and support us in the spaces of the pumps and valves and all of those other areas where the Energy Council is quite critical as well, working with us on this through PLSA and BUSA. And then the government support, I think Caleb has spoken to this, but there's 2 things I just want to highlight here to say how do we leverage the working together with other state entities. So we are working closely with the SAA in terms of our turbines maintenance, because they have also got some good maintenance for the aeroplane system. So they've been working with us with our subsidiary, which is Eskom Rotec Industries. And then also on the security side, the committee might be aware that we have been a lot of issues with security in our power station, be it theft, be it all sort of things. So Denel is been brought on board as well to assist us. They've got some good technologies that they have that they're proposing to work with us, so we will be working with them as well. Let's move on to the next one. Yeah, this just talk to the issues of the call for action in terms of the how do we then reduce the demand, together, because Eskom by ourselves we cannot reduce all the stages, so we will need the public as well, and also the local government and spheres as well to assist in terms of lowering the demands and also minimizing the issue of people stealing electricity, because then it makes it difficult to control it, and then also to encourage the communities to use electricity that is needed as well. So there's that load management in terms of our program. And then secondly, the residential load. And then the last being the energy efficiencies that is required for all of us as South African to say, how do we then, because one of the things that has been picked up from the system operator is that sometimes when there was load shedding, and then those who have got the inverters, they start at the same time, then that also increased the demand and all of those things. So there is that education. I know that there's been some outcry on that sphere there, that people are saying they don't want to reduce the the charging of the investors after load shedding. But those are all the levers that we are saying with a proper education, we can all assist to minimize the impact of this load shedding so that it doesn't go to higher stages as well. Yeah, I think I will stop on at this slide, Sumaya, because the rest, Chair, because the rest of the slides really talk to some of the things that we have already spoken to. Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thanks, Kenneth.
Thank you, Becky. Honourable Chair, back to you, and we can take questions from yourself and the members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kasim and Mr. Kumalo and Ms. Fink. I'm going to open the floor now for questions, members. We will take a first round of 3. I'll ask that we have 3 questions each. We'll start with members Bartman, Kasim, Brinkhuis, Christians, and then Murray. And then we'll go the rest. Member Murray and Pretorius, we'll do that in the next round. So Member Bartman.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you to Eskom for the presentation. I just want to find out, because at the previous presentations from Eskom to the WCPP, what they also used to do is they used to do detailed analysis of the breakdowns and when they're going to do their maintenance as well, their big maintenance and their small maintenance. And I would like to find out whether they could provide us with more detailed analysis and why they're so frequent in terms of breakdowns of some of the units and the equipment. Secondly, if we limit the maintenance now on some of the equipment, what is the outlook for the summer season? Because summer season is notoriously, obviously, tourism season, and tourism is one of the top 3 economies in the Western Cape. So I'm a little bit concerned about the long-term impact that the limited maintenance now might have. And then finally, I wanted to find out what the public involvement strategy in terms of whether it's working. At the moment, you can't use heaters, you can't heat food, you can't use lighting, you can't necessarily study during the same at particular times. It's really, really difficult for people to be able to plan their lives. So are we getting a proper public involvement strategy? What are people saying? Are we adapting in this regard? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member. Thank you, Member Bartman. Member Kasim.
Thank you, Chairperson. To the acting CEO of Eskom, when you speak about being happy with the support that you're getting from the Minister of Electricity, can you please clarify what support are you actually getting and what are you referring to? What assistance and input have you received to date? And then, do Eskom have enough electrical engineers, technicians, and other experts to deal with this matter? What are the experiences and are background checks done on them before being employed? And with Eskom putting out the call, as you've mentioned previously, for more assistance, are you saying that previously or currently, those who you currently have employed or appointed are not fit enough or experienced enough to resolve the issues that we're currently facing? In terms of maintenance, currently, who does the maintenance? Is it Eskom, or do Eskom outsource those companies? If yes, who are these companies? And then my last question before halting the rest of it, what problems are encountered with regards to the new power stations so far as power generation is concerned, and whether there are plans to refurbish and put into use old power stations that were previously decommissioned in order to solve energy crisis issues in this country? I'll leave it there for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Kasim. Member Brinkhuis.
Oh, thank you very much, Chair. Thanks. First of all, thank you very much to Eskom for the presentation. I've been looking so much forward to this meeting. Chair, first, before I want to ask my question, just a little bit of input. India has more than 1 billion people in their population. They got approximately 1.2, 1.3 billion people. India, the whole of South to the north, they got no load shedding. In South Africa, we have 60 million people, plus minus 60 million people, and we have load shedding. To me, it looks like there's something terribly, terribly wrong at Eskom, but I'm going to leave it at that. My question is to the CEO of Eskom, how much coal, hoeveel steenkool, how much coal are we exporting to Europe? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Member Brinkhorst. Member Christians?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, and thank you to Eskom for the presentation. Just a couple of small questions is, are we exporting electricity to other countries? First question. Another question is, people get confused between the different stages. Eskom maybe say it's a stage 6, but then it's a stage 8. And people were saying that you're playing with the stages, and because it's all the same, you know. So if you can just give clarification, some of the people say Eskom says it's a stage 6, but it's actually a stage 8. And also maybe just to answer, and maybe if I don't know if you're the right people to answer, but the sabotage that we heard in the media, is there power stations being sabotaged, you know, that's why they got the military in to protect power stations. Sabotage, you know, is because that is a major concern if there's still, and I mean, you know, the utterances made by the former CEO about, you know, money going missing. You know, we can talk about all of these things, but if there's sabotage and money going missing and people working for Eskom, you know, being the sabotagers and so on, then you know, then we're in deep trouble. So, Chair, I'll leave it for the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Murray, with your indulgence, can I ask that we do the, can you be to the second set of 4? Then we can allow the Eskom delegation to answer that. So, Mr. Kasim, if you could answer those questions, please.
Thanks, Chair and members. I'll start, and my colleagues will come in. Maybe the first one for Member Bartman, the detailed analysis, the maintenance, and then I'll come and deal with public involvement. If Becky could deal with those first 2 questions. And then while you're covering the maintenance, I think there was the other question asked by Member Kasim around, is the maintenance done internally or outsourced? Becky, if you can address those questions around generation, then I'll come in, and Isabel. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Thanks, Caleb. Yes, in terms of the details maintenance analysis, we can provide that, Chair, no problems. I think we still do that. I think also the other point that was made was why we limit maintenance in winter as well. What's going to be the summer like? I think it's a good question, Honorable Member, but this is a normal profile of how we do maintenance within the generation space. In winter, we normally go lower on maintenance. Hence, I said that we really would go through winter with a big unit like Quebec. So, but because it's criticality of the Quebec as well for us to assist us in the next summer. And when you will see on my presentation that as well, in the summer month, from say November, December, we will be getting those 3 big units from Kusile. So that's why that the system should start to look better as well during that time when we are also ramping up the maintenance as well. So we've got some of these big units that are returning. It will really help us a lot. And then maybe let me just try and cover all those ones. And then the issue of maintenance, who does it? I think there what we've picked up as well, on the main plants, we've got people that have been doing maintenance. Like I'm talking now on the boilers and the turbines that have been doing maintenance with us for many years. And then also the turbines are done by our subsidiaries. So there is stability in terms of what's happening there though. So that is the company that does maintenance on our turbines from Quebec up to in Limpopo, Medupi, and Matimba. So there is also stabilities in terms of what's happening. But what we have picked up was that in our auxiliary plants, especially in the coal fleet, that's where as well, when there was embargoes with the recruitment, we started to outsource a lot there. So one of the decisions that we have taken now, you'll find that on the plants, like we are milling plants, and let me just say the auxiliaries for the turbines and boilers, that's where we are picking up a bigger problem. That's why you will see that our partials are very high over the period as well. That's when we realize that the companies that comes in there, like sometimes companies 3 years, it's 2 years, and it's one year, you won't be able to do proper maintenance and have proper history. So we have now taken a decision as well that those areas we will start bringing them back to the ESCOM as well, so that at the primary plant we don't outsource, the other companies can assist us maybe at the second tier of the maintenance. So that is the only area that we are focusing on to change that as well. And then the issue with the problems with the new stations, I did talk our new stations, obviously, in terms of the fleet is Drakensberg, I mean, Ngula, running very well, no issue. The second one is Medupi. Medupi has passed now the bathtub curve as well. Like I've indicated, Medupi on any given days will be running above 90% availability. So Medupi has now, like I indicated, is one of our key stations. Osile, with that failure of the chimney, it's still very difficult to judge how is its performance, but we are working to ensure that when this unit returns, it's starting to run quite reasonably as well. Yeah, I think, let me see, Caleb. I think I've covered, Caleb, most of the questions. I will leave that one on the sabotage to maybe you can cover that one. Thanks, Caleb.
Becky, you just want to deal with skills at your power stations and additional skills that we got, and is there anything lacking? We're looking from a skills perspective, then I'll deal with some of the other questions. Thanks. Thanks, Chair.
All right. Sorry. Yeah, I think the issue was talking to if we've got enough engineers. Definitely engineering in ESCOM, because remember I think we've got enough engineering resources as well between ourselves and our contractor partners, because most of our OEMs, the big OEMs, our contracts also involve engineering skills. The artisans, I think there is gap there, especially where we have outsourced the work on the auxiliary plant. That is one area that we are focusing on now to look at as well, to try and turn that one around, to see, the amount of outsourcing that we have done is not giving us the results that we are expecting. So we are looking at that as well. And then the rest of the other areas, okay, the operating is an ongoing thing or situation that the operating staff, because those are specific to ESCOM, unlike the artisans that you can get into the market. There was some time lag that we didn't have a good pipeline, but hence on the crowdsourcing initiatives, we are focusing mostly on the ex-ESCOM operators that will assist us with the training for the new operators, as we are aggressively increasing that levels of operating in terms of the manpower within our power station. Yeah, thanks, Kerry.
Thanks. To you, Chairperson, if I address some of the other questions, the one was public involvement. What are we doing around that? I think firstly, as ESCOM, we have our power alert that communicates messages to use electricity sparingly. We've also recently launched the DSM program. We're looking to, over the next few months, to add more megawatts from a DSM perspective. We will obviously, to the other members' questions, work through the NECOM and through the NAT joints that reports into the Minister of Electricity to help us from a government perspective to consolidate initiatives around demand side management. Maybe also further with regard to Member Kasim's question on Minister of Electricity. He's been going to all the power stations, hearing from the staff on the ground on the issues, what needs to be unlocked. We do believe that it also helped with progress on ESCOM being allowed to start the construction of the Kusile temporary stacks, and we're hoping that his contributions can help us get some of the waivers from Department of DFFE around utilizing and operating the Kusile stacks come end of November, December. If I then also touch on the question member asked about previous units that were decommissioned. What are we doing about them? As a management team and the board, we recognize that stations that are performing well, even if they come to the end of their economic lives. For example, we look across the fleet and the Camden Power Station is really reliable, performing well. As a exco and a management team, we've decided let's invest capital expenditure that allows us to continue to operate Camden for a few more years. Now, members, I must say, yeah, we're not talking life extension of the plant. We know in terms of the supply and demand balance, if we can get a few more years with minimal investment in operating Camden that's reliable in the interest of the country, that is the approach that the ExCo and the board is taking. Once you talk life extension, that requires much more significant capital investments, and that would require us to understand the business cases. So we're not yet there, but to continue operating plants that are available to us, those are the things we are working on. And as Becky said, on the stations that are not performing, we want to get megawatts out of them. If I then also touch on the question of sabotage, yes, we're working with law enforcement agencies, the SANDF, to protect our assets and our infrastructure. There is obviously across the generation portfolio of stations, certain stations that are more troublesome, and we have much more investigations, but we're working with law enforcement agencies to deal with that. It's very difficult to also prove sabotage. Investigations are ongoing, and we need the support of not only Eskom's security arm, but also other arms from the various law enforcement agencies, the Hawks and etc. With regard to the comment, are we exporting outside of South Africa? Yes, in terms, we do have 1 or 2 firm contracts. Maybe Isabel can help me here, but it's very minimal. And in terms of those firm contracts, in the event that we are load shedding, then those contracts are also load shedded as well. And then I will ask Isabel to just to talk on the supply and demand balance, and more importantly, also that question member Christians raised around stage 6 versus stage 8, and explain that clarity. With regard to the question is how much coal is being exported to Europe, I think that is more for, we won't know that detail. We can look to the coal industry and the Minerals Council to provide that information. We do understand and acknowledge that in terms of logistics to export the coal, in terms of the railway network from Mpumalanga to the ports, that's a challenge under Transnet. So that is affecting exports. Maybe just to close the loop, and Becky can come in here, from an Eskom perspective, according to our coal contracts, we have the coal that is required to produce our electricity, and those respective suppliers have been delivering to us. Yes, we do have issues with coal quality, and we're putting in mechanisms to address that in the short term, and we're working on a longer term end-to-end solution for the coal value chain, which we've appointed a supplier to do, but that will take effectively a year to implement, but that work is underway. If I may then ask Isabel just to deal with supply and demand, and then stage 6 versus stage 8. And Becky, if you want to come in and add to what I have said. Thank you, Chairperson. Isabel?
Thanks, Caleb. Yes, let's start with we do supply our neighboring countries. I think the one point here that is very important is the comparative size of the neighboring countries to South Africa. And the reason I'm highlighting that is because we also often get the question that why can't they assist us when we are in need of extra megawatts? So just to give you an idea, Lesotho, for instance, their peak demand is 226 megawatts compared to us looking at 34,000. Then Namibia around 700 megawatts, Mozambique 1,950 megawatts, and Lesotho 587 megawatts. So that just gives you, sorry, that's Botswana, just giving you some idea of the comparative sizes. So when we do load shed, the countries we are exporting to at that specific time, it gets load shed proportionally. So there's also different stages that get load shed. It's not a 100% cutoff, and there's a very good reason for that. As much as we cannot get a megawatt contribution, where we do have power stations, like in Zimbabwe, for instance, those rotating machines then also helps us with the stability of the grid during load shedding stages. So we do reduce proportionally, but we don't cut them off totally. So just that that is clear. The question around the confusion between the different stages. As I've mentioned before, we do actually have more than one load reduction lever that we use before we get to load shedding itself. So you will often see that in the tweets that go out, we would have reduced our load demand by, say, 7,000, yet we are saying that we've only had stage 6 load shedding. That is perfectly correct. The reason being that we also have load curtailment. Load curtailment is a program we have the big industrial customers as part of their contracting, whereby we would ask them to reduce specific stages of their load or amounts of their load. And we do that. There's also a specific table for that, stages 1 to 4. And then when we do get to high load shedding stages, we will then start looking at limiting the load curtailment. And the reason is because the load curtailment and the VPS start moving into the same domain. VPS is another load reduction scheme that we have, whereby it is voluntary, and under the voluntary scheme, they would do a day ahead bidding. We actually have a virtual market we call it virtual power station, whereby those reductions are bought from ourselves. We also have a demand response program. And then, of course, we have interruptible loads, which is typically your potlines from the different smelters on the Natal side, as well as in Mozelle in Mozambique. So we have contractual relations with them as well to take a potline off when we need it and then put it back. We have certain durations for that during the course of the week. So effectively, we have a number of instruments that we use, not just load shedding. And I think at this point, I also need to just emphasize that the higher stage of load shedding does not in any way, shape or form say that we are closer to a blackout. We are in extreme control of the network when we do load shed. And we do that specifically to stabilize the network, therefore not to get to a blackout. Blackouts also normally is caused by a transmission fault, which then cascades and ultimately resides in tripping of generators. So it is not typically a demand-supply situation that causes a national blackout. So maybe let me just put that on the table because there's a lot of questions around that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Chairperson. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Kassim. Thank you, Ms. Fick, and thank you, Mr. Kumalo. I'm going to say that member Nkondlo has noted in the chat box that her connectivity is bad. She's put her questions there, so she can't ask them. That's fine, I will. And then member Dagmar has also contacted me to say that he's got 3 questions. He's struggling to connect, so I will ask his questions too. But let's start the second round with member Murray. Murray.
Murray or Murray? Sorry.
Murray, sir.
Okay.
Member Murray?
Oh.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Chair?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Apologies, I was having an issue with my Bluetooth there. I was very interested to hear the explanation with regards to the curtailment and how that is related to stages and not necessarily to whether there's a blackout. But I would be interested to know if there was a level at which we are most likely to experience a national blackout, noting that Eskom has said that they can deal with a stage 8 scenario. I'd also like to know if we have previously been in stage 8. I just anchoring on the question from member Christians, who noted that these levels seem to fluctuate quite a bit. And then to the question of sabotage, there wasn't really a clear answer in terms of whether there has been any sabotage. There was an inference that it has been challenging to investigate sabotage. And so I'd be interested to know if there have been any confirmed cases of sabotage, and what the challenges are in terms of the investigations, as well as the role being played by Denel. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Murray. Member Murray.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I have a different approach to this because it's very technical, and I don't think this committee can say we are engineers or technicians. So this is all such a lot of figures and stuff. So my questions will be more to the point. Minister Mantashe, Gweri Mantashe's IRP, is it still under review? Or is what you presented here part of a completed IRP plan, that's integrated resource plan, the blueprint for policy for electricity generation? So are you finished with the consultations? Did you consult with the Western Cape government on this plan? And did you consult with Petro SA also for solutions? That's number 1. My second question is, I have it in very good authority that in the Karoo there's a possible 200 TCF shale gas in the Karoo, and that Petro SA has processed 2 TCFs over the past 20 years, which they use. Has Eskom sent its engineers there to look at the possibility of that load of gas that they can possibly use? We can use it for gas stoves, gas refrigerators. We'll start a whole new industry. If we looked at that, that's point number 2. Now, the waste to energy project that Minister Patricia de Lille started in Athlone, and it was stopped after spending millions on it because they ran out of funds. Why did it run out of funds? Have you budgeted to renew that project, or must the taxpayer again lose all the money already spent? I think it's in excess of 200 million already spent. That's my third and my last question. Petro SA is a synthetic fuels refinery. We know that. And they are perfectly positioned to produce green fuels, for which there's a great demand globally. Are they part of this IRP, Integrated Resource Plan? Did they come on board? And what was the result after bringing Petro SA on board so that we can use gas? And lastly,
no, so remember, Renee, I did say 3 questions. I've allowed you an extra one. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to move on.
Well,
because
you
you did say
can
last
move
one.
on, but you allow long questions, which is longer than my small 3. So be fair, Chairman. I heard some people talk almost 10 minutes on the questions. I only had 3, but it was short questions.
You already
So
asked
will
4,
you
sir.
allow me to ask my other question?
Very quickly.
Right. Job equity. Are you applying it when you appoint engineers and top management? Or are you taking the best available brains in the country? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Pretorius.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Kasim, Mr. Kumalo, Ms. Fook, thank you very much. I don't think any of us has any idea of the extremities of the challenges you are facing. And with that in mind, I would like to try and ask a practical question. Mr. Kumalo referred to the projected 65 and 75% recovery rates for next year and the year thereafter. And Ms. Fick, in response to a question a couple of minutes ago, referred to, without putting words in her mouth, that it's normally transmission that is causing a challenge or a problem. My question is, we have, sorry, if I may just add, I have experienced on a number of occasions where a message comes through to say, but load shedding has now been reduced to this, that, and the other levels, and then half an hour later or an hour later, it doesn't matter, it says, sorry, it's now been scrapped, it's now been upgraded to another level. My question is this: do you have, are there warning lights? Are there bells ringing in advance to tell you here comes trouble? I'm sorry, I don't have any other way to put it. Thank you.
Thank you,
Chair.
Member. Thank you, Member Pretorius. Member Kondlo, are you still with us? Can you ask your questions?
Yes, Chair, can you hear me?
I can hear you, ma'am. Continue.
Okay, so you're allowing us 3 questions for this round?
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right. Let me then prioritize my questions. Chair, the first one I would like to ask, what is Eskom's decision on the call to ensure schools, hospitals, and other critical services are protected in relation to heavy disruptions when such do happen? That's my first question. And my second one is, in the Western Cape, how many wheeling contracts do exist and for what size in the total of megawatts covered by those contracts, and which companies or industries are involved? My third one for this round, how much savings were accrued by Eskom during their 51 campaign, which was more on the demand management side, and what target of savings are in the proposed DM plans, and how is this to be realized with households, industry, and government? So I'll stop on those 3 for this round, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Member Dagmo's questions are as follows. There's 3. It's please provide an update on the progress regarding negotiations around the just transition with Labour and social partners. In Eskom's view, given that the City of Cape Town is levying a surcharge without approval of the regulator, is this fair to the consumer and is it lawful? And 3, does Eskom support the practice of municipalities to deduct prepaid payments for electricity? Sorry, who was that called? Okay, let me just repeat that last question. Does Eskom support the practice of municipalities to deduct prepaid payments for electricity of the customer, example, water debts? Mr. Kasim and your team, if you can respond.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start and my team colleagues will come in. If I start maybe on the curtailment and stages, stage 8 and all the load shedding and system stuff, I'll ask Isabel to address all those questions. And then I'll ask Becky to deal with the generation questions, and I'll come in with some of the others. Maybe just in terms of IRP, firstly, Member Marie, yes, that's a DMRE process. that process is still ongoing, and the DMRE follows a consultation process. I'm not up to date if they have consulted with the Western Cape and what is the timing of that, but our understanding is it's still ongoing and needs to be concluded. So at this point in time, we are presenting the Eskom assumptions, which is also aligned to the existing one, not the updated IRP. With regard to Karoo and the Shell gas and Petro SA, no, I'm not up to speed with that and what is available. But if I just link it to the IRP or the energy plan, I think from a country perspective and security of supply, if there are alternate options available to the country, I think it's important that government supports that and looks to leverage that. That's my only comment with regard to that particular point. And the same member Marie, I'm not close to the waste energy project at Athlone and what has happened, etc. From our perspective, I can say from an Eskom perspective, no, we don't have that project in our outlook and our forecast. And maybe at a government level, they're looking at it. And in the same, I guess, applies, Petro SA within the ambit of the Department of Minerals, Resource and Energy, they would then have to look at what are the options in terms of possible greenfields for Petro SA. Those are those questions. Let me ask, maybe just on member and Conlo, with regard to schools, hospitals, and police stations, etc. I think from where we're sitting as Eskom and the grid, there is a practical issue that you would need to have separate connections and feeders, and my technical colleagues can come in here. And obviously Eskom has just about half of the distribution in the country. There's also all the municipalities and the infrastructure linked to that. So it's not only what Eskom can do within its own distribution networks, it's how do we deal with all the other municipalities in trying to separate supply. There is that practical and technical issue, but the overwhelming element is, as Isabel will mention, from a system operator, how do you balance that and protect the grid? If I then also just deal with member Tagmore on JET and labor and social partners, we are still engaging with the unions on that. We know, importantly, even with utilizing the existing stations for a few more years to deal with the demand and the supply requirements of the country, there will be a point in time when these stations come to an end, and we need to ensure that we do it in a just manner to protect those communities and also give it further opportunity for those communities to remain economically active. So where we are as Eskom, our JET strategy, our JET initiatives are continuing. If I link that to the debt relief bill, that Komati is funded, but we effectively not allowed to pursue any further borrowings in the next 3 years, we would need to engage with National Treasury, the presidency, on how do you deal with JET within the conditions of the debt relief bill. Those discussions would still need to be had. Maybe with regard to the surcharge and not being approved by the regulator, Honorable Chairperson, I think, yeah, you'll have to address that to the regulator. Our understanding is that all tariffs need to be approved by the regulator. And whether you can deduct prepaid against water debts, I think that is more a National Treasury or a government issue. It's not within Eskom's mandate to give any guidance or or pronouncements around that important item. Shall I hand over to Isabel to deal with the system and the load issues, etc.? And then Becky, you can deal with the sabotage and other issues. Thanks, Isabel.
Thanks, Caleb. Honourable Member Pretorius, I'd like to start by thanking you for your gratitude. It's highly appreciated. It's not something that we receive often, so thank you so much. Just to correct a statement on saying that transmission is the cause for problems more often than not, the statement actually is that when we look at a blackout, it is normally the cause thereof is normally a transmission cause that then cascades into a number of generators tripping. So just to correct that, it's not normally transmission that plays up all over the show. So why the fast change in stages? To explain that is, are there any warning signs? And unfortunately, there's not a clear-cut answer. There could be, excuse me. There could be warning signs. If, for instance, we have a generator that is running with a boiler tube leak, and we know that we need to bring it off to avoid further damage. In such a case, we then have a fair bit of warning, and with fair bit, I'm talking about an hour or 2 or 3, and we are then able to make the call earlier. However, that's not always the case. If we have units tripping, and maybe I should just explain that the network is extremely dynamic. You can actually do a parallel to the national road network. And if you then picture that the road is actually made from elastic bands. So if anything goes on one side, you will see the rest of it react. And any one of the bridges can collapse at any particular point in time. We have an update on the network every 4 seconds. So it is extremely dynamic. When we see things going south or tripping, that happens in a matter of milliseconds. So no, we don't always have any warning signs or whistles or bells coming up. And that is also how it can happen that we have fast changes in terms of the stages required for the balancing of the demand and the supply. So if you, for instance, let's say we were in stage 4, and while we're in stage 4, we have a multiple unit trip at a station. A typical unit is around 600 megawatts. So you can literally in one go, say lose 2000 megawatts. Then you don't have time and you have to immediately up the stage of load shedding. So this is typically the scenario that we face in every single day. If you recall, when we did the presentation, I told you that with the 3 scenarios that we use as our planning scenarios, we move amongst those scenarios multiple times each day. And that just talks to the dynamics of the network. And this is why this sometimes happen. We really try as much as we possibly can to work with giving people enough warning. Unfortunately, it is not always possible. Thanks. Becky?
Yeah, thanks, Isabel. Maybe let me start with the Honourable Chair dealing with the point of sabotage. I think I did check with our head of security also last week on this point that as of this year, we have not seen any incident of sabotage in our power stations, but there were some issues in the prior years as well, which the security police and those doing investigations are busy with those ones, and then they will also give us feedback. We have also beefed up the security as well with the presence of the military at some of the site. I think that also is helping as well to create that visibility. So far we have not seen any issues of sabotage. And then in terms of the job fit, yeah, I think we believe that we are appointing people that are fit for doing the jobs. And obviously, most of our jobs as well, be it artisans, operators, engineers, people comes in from the bottom and grow within the company. So I think we are appointing the best brains that is there available. Like I've got no reason to believe that there's people that we have here who are not qualified to do what need to be done. I think the issue of warnings, I think Isabella has covered that one. Caleb, I think the rest of the point you also did cover. Yeah, no, there's nothing more to cover from my side. Thanks.
Through you, Chair, just one or two more questions.
Yes.
Remember, on Conlo around wheeling contracts that exist with the Western Cape. I don't have that detail at my fingertips. We can then revert to yourself through the Secretariat on that detail, Chairperson. And in terms of demand initiatives and what we've achieved, if I understood the question correctly, and if I've misinterpreted, we can also come back with detail in writing. We've achieved 4,500 megawatts through our demand side programs over the all the years to date. And in terms of what we've launched, we're looking to have targets of up to 1,450 megawatts achieved through demand programs over the next 3 years. With regard to specific RAND savings, on that one to Chairperson, we'll have to come back in writing to the committee. Thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Kasim. Although I must admit that I'm not sure if I got the answer to Member Murray's second question, is have we been to stage 8?
I think Isabel answered that. Isabel, from an ESCOM perspective, no, we've not been at stage 8.
Sorry, I must have missed that. Thank you very much. I'm going to allow a third round of questions. I know Member Nkondlo has asked for 2 more questions, and Member Kasim. So Member Nkondlo, if you could ask your questions, please.
Thank you, thank you, Chair. The 2 questions I have there is how has ESCOM dealt with its coal suppliers to ensure quality coal as agreed in its contracts? Because I think this is one thing that has always been on the media, especially on the coal generation side, if maybe there is any insight, if true, of what has happened there. The second one, has ESCOM engaged clean coal technology to mediate its carbon footprint? If so, please provide the detail of, if not, why not? The last one, Chair, if you allow, can I just find out from ESCOM if there are any battery storage projects in the Western Cape? And if so, if they can provide some detail to us of the progress of those and at what stage are they of implementation? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Kasim.
Thank you, Chairperson. I don't think the comments made by one of the members have fully been responded to based on allegations of corruption at ESCOM. But let me add, are there any investigations that are currently ongoing at ESCOM at this moment, so far as allegations of corruption are concerned at the entity? As it was previously mentioned by the former ESCOM CEO, Andre de Ruyter, and how many cases of corruption? And then the issues experienced in previous years at the power stations, was it major sabotage, theft, or other forms of crime, as millions of rands was spent on deployment of members of the South African Defence Force to deal with this matter? If yes, when was the last case of sabotage or theft? If you can just give an indication on that. And then lastly, can we get an indication if the Minister of Electricity will still be joining us, as we have questions directed to him, or is he dodging this one and sending his people to respond on his behalf, because it's now 3:15? Can we get an update if he's still attending or joining us today, please?
We do have an update, Ms. Kasim. We are in communication with his PA. Ms. Kluti, do you want to give us, Ms. Kluti is the Senior Procedural Officer, do you want to give it to us now quickly what the latest communication from his office is?
Good day, members, through you, Chairperson. I just spoke to the PA of the Minister of Electricity, He's been called, he was in a cabinet meeting and he's in another meeting. He will unfortunately not be able to make it for our meeting today, but she advised that she will by tomorrow morning give us a revised date when the minister will be able to address the committee. If that's in order, Chairperson.
Thank you very much. We will deal with that matter when we come to resolutions and actions. Member Nkondlo, is that another hand or is that just a legacy hand?
It's a legacy hand, Chair. I'll drop
Thank
it
you.
now. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Marie?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can understand why my questions weren't fully answered. The minister is still not here. So I want to ask, if you have the best technicians on board, why have I heard nothing about solar and wind energy? And what is your take on wave energy technology? If a person do a little research, you'll see that is what is now happening. Wave energy technology is being applied, and solar and wind energy, but I've heard nothing about those three possibilities. Is anybody prepared to answer me? If we have the best technicians available to Eskom, why have they not considered these? They rather look at nuclear.
Thank you, Member Marie. Now, Member Murray.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, firstly, I would just like clarity with regards to my question on sabotage. I did ask what was the involvement of Denel, and I am concerned, Chair, that if the military is involved, if Denel are involved, and we're only looking at cases of sabotage, maybe it's something more sinister, and that's why I would really like clarity on this. I think it's very concerning. But I also, Chair, through you, would like to ask, I note that there is a nature reserve which surrounds Kuburg, and that this nature reserve has been closed since COVID. There's been minimal communication with the community of Danafontein surrounding the nature reserve's closure, why it's closed, when it will be opened, and what the issues are surrounding that. So if we could get some clarity on that. But also, should the nature reserve be reopened, and that's a conversation in and of itself, what measures would be explored to safely manage people coming in and out of the nature reserve? Because it is unorthodox that a nature reserve, which has a nuclear plant on it, allows for visitors. And so ensuring its safety needs to be paramount, but there also needs to be communication with the community who live near it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kasim and your team, if you could answer those questions, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start. My colleagues can come in. With regard to Member Marie's question on other technologies, so I think first point is Eskom, in terms of policy, is not allowed to procure new generation capacity. That is through the Department of Minerals, Resource and Energy. And as your earlier question said, there's an IRP, and within the IRP, there's an allocation of those technologies. Substantially at this point in time and to date, all the renewables goes via a bid window process through the DMRE. Eskom's not allowed to participate in solar and wind. We've only got the Sierra wind farm, and that's the only one. With regard to repurposing and repowering, that's where we'd like to add PV. As a board, we're busy battery project at the moment, and maybe Becky can help me to the other question from the member. Is there any battery projects in the Western Cape? I'm not exactly sure about the location, but Becky can come in. On wave energy, and Sumaya can also help me. We have done studies around wave energy in the past. I think the overall cost for it is extremely high, and we in terms of what is needed from a system and baseload capacity, my understanding, and Sumaya can help us here, it doesn't give you that baseload capacity. I'll allow Becky to deal with the sabotage, the coal stuff, clean coal, and the corruption issues. Becky, over to you, and maybe the Kuburg one as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks, Caleb. Yeah, on the issue of our coal suppliers, yeah, obviously we have now reinforced our coal sampling before the coal is delivered to the stations as well. There's sampling from the mine, and then also it gets certified. To get to site, there is further sampling that takes place, and then we are also installing the online analyzers as part of our conveying system as well. So we have worked over the years to improve that. So we are dealing with our contractors when there's issues as well. Obviously, we do enforce contracts once it's found. In terms of the battery storage, correct, we have got two sites within the Western Cape. One is in Worcester, and the other one is next to Sierra Wind Farm there. Which is there's two actually there next to the Sierra Wind Farm. There's a bigger one there as well. So that is being done by our own engineers, with our partners that are bringing the technology. So we've got about 3 sites. Those on that are next to Sierra, they are very close to each other. Those substations there where we are putting battery station, and then the furthest one is in Worcester. So we are busy there with the battery storage project. Then in terms of the clean technology, obviously we not, except for Medupi and Kusile now as the last stations. Most of our stations were built in prior years. So you will see that Kusile as well, the technology that comes with, it's got a desulfurization plant that will make sure as well that our carbon footprint is reduced. But the older stations, obviously we are improving with installing some of the latest technologies to reduce the particulate emissions, and some of the stations as well that return to service. We did put what we call the low NOx burners and that. So, but the rest of the stations are also installed with the older technologies. We just do those enhancements to reduce the particulate emissions as well. And we have also installed the high frequency transformers. That is also to deal with emissions that we are putting up into the environment. So those are the projects that we are busy with. I think, Caleb, you did answer the issue of the technicians, and I think I touched on it as well to say our technicians were also involved with the designs of these battery storages that we are putting in, and some of the PVs, just that now we don't have a go-ahead to install that. And then maybe let me clarify the Denel involvement. The Denel so far has not been involved. They will more involve on the technology, on the security side of the business. All the sabotage and corruption cases have been reported to the police, and they are being an SIU. They're reporting that. You recall that mostly at Scopa we do get an update as well from ourselves as Eskom, so as SIU, because they've been mandated to deal with all those corruption cases that stem from prior years as well. And then you would have seen as well the members, some of the media in court. So that is done in that space within the government spheres, within the SIU and the police and works. They are dealing with those cases of corruptions. And then the issue of the nature reserve at Quebec, I will have to get the details on that from the team chair. We will make sure that it gets circulated as well in terms of when is it going to be opened as well. I did send a note to the colleagues down there in Quebec. Yeah. Thanks, sir.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Kassim, Mr. Kumalo, and Ms. Fick. Members, if there are any other more questions, I just want to give a cautionary note that I see member questions. I will take you now, sir. But I also want to note that my load shedding happened at 2 o'clock this afternoon. And I had to make sure that my laptop is fully charged and my cell phone as a backup is fully charged, and I had to have a UPS installed to have my Wi-Fi sorted. But I'm in a privileged position that I can do that. Many of our citizens cannot do that, especially in the Western Cape. I'm not sure you're aware, but in the Western Cape, the Premier has set aside 60 million to do emergency load shedding packs for the poorest of the poor. I acknowledge your presentation, and I appreciate it, but I think we must also appreciate the environment in which we stand, the environment in which we are living in right now. And I would ask that we have a greater sense of urgency in making sure that we get this load shedding problem sorted as soon as we possibly can, coupled with the corruption cases and the sabotage, because that's that we all know that's been a major issue regarding that. And I'm not too comfortable with the answers, but be that as it may, we will leave it to you, and we will monitor the situation. Member Christians, you had a follow-up, sir?
Yeah, no. I just wanted to note, Chair. I don't know if I missed it, but if they can just tell us, and I know the likelihood to go to stage 8 is minimal because they're talking about 6, but tell us just that we can tell the people when they inquire, how many hours will there be no electricity in a stage 8? How many hours? In darkness will the people be? So, people's confused because people don't know, like I said, the different stages. So tell us, if we hit a stage 8, how many hours of electricity will we have or do not have for that specific day? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kasim.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Member Christians, and Isabel can on a 32-hour cycle. So for stage 8 load shedding, it means 16 hours of interruption in a 32-hour cycle. So worst case, within that 32-hour cycle, when you take a 24-hour window, there is a possibility of having 12 hours of interruption, which is effectively 3 tranches of 4 hours in a 24-hour cycle. When you get to stage 8. Isabel, if I'm not correct, please clarify. And on that one specifically through you, Chair. Isabel?
Thanks. No, Kalip, you're 100% correct. Stage 8 is 4 blocks of 4 hours each in a 32-hour window. So your summary was 100%. Thanks.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. And then the last Member Kondlu had a follow-up.
No, Chair, I would think one of the things we must maybe put across to colleagues at ESCOM is that, for me, if in the demand management program, like one has experienced during the 51M campaign, that there is more interaction with the public so that we dispel the myths or misinformation, but also get what is correct information, because we're really at a pedestrian level. We want to know what is the difference between the different stages, because what we experience, at a personal level and by communities, you can't, because we're not engineers ourselves, so we can't say this is a stage 6. So we end up being left to, propaganda that is there on the media. So I would really encourage ESCOM that they must do this on their side, lest they are found, coming to explain to us, which might make sense as you are listening, but the various communities that we're sitting with, particularly poor communities, you would have a situation where you are told that people did not have an electricity since morning until very late, others, for the entire day. So we need to get a system that is able to explain, but also where people can feedback so that we know whether this is load shedding or it's something else. I just wanted to raise that, Chair, because I think from what we are listening with here and what has been explained versus what we are experiencing, it's very difficult indeed to actually align the daily experiences of what each and every stage means. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Member Nkondlo. Mr. Kasim, if you want to answer that and give your closing remarks by any chance?
Thank you, Chairperson. Member Nkondlo, 100% agree with you. I think what is happening currently, and we all experience it, we have load shedding, and within that load shedding, then there's issues of vandalism, cable theft, etc. Then effectively extends the supply interruption, which is then being addressed whether through Eskom or the necessary municipalities. So that does impact, and I think the communication channels are critical. Fully agree with you in improving our communications around demand side management and campaigns. But more importantly, as you said, let us take the inputs from the committee on Eskom being much more clear and proactive on our communication. Honorable Chairperson and to the members, thanks for the opportunity. We are focusing, and I've told the executive team that the most important thing for Eskom to focus on now is support generation to reduce the unplanned outages, reduce the load shedding, and also fully agree with you. The most difficult thing is that when 40,000 people are painted with a brush, that we are all corrupt. And I know there are many loyal people that wake up every day and try to keep the lights on. So we need to address the corruption within Eskom and the country and do our best as fast as possible, Chairperson. But thanks for the opportunity. At any time you require us to come back, please, we'll be more than welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Casson, and to your team. And yes, we hope and trust that you will take the utility forward, and that vision of 2025 indeed comes to pass, because we desperately need it. Thank you very much. With no further deliberations, your team is.
Can I just address you on something, if with your permission?
Yes, the member.
Speaker, Chairman. Seeing that the Minister said he will be here and he was not here, can we please resolve to send unanswered questions directly to him for a response, please? This is serious.
We will deal with that within the resolutions and actions, Member Murray. So we will deal with that very shortly, sir.
Yes, sir. I might be going off, sir, because of load shedding in my house. So that's why I ask you.
I just want to excuse the team quickly, and then I'll deal with it immediately. So thank you, member. Thank you, Mr. Kasim and Mr. Kumalo and Ms. Fick. You are excused. Thank you. Okay, Member Marie, we will move directly to the resolutions. Your comment is noted that we send the questions directly to the minister. Member Kasim?
Sorry, Chief. I just want to get clarity. The fact that the minister's officials are here, his people are here, what is the purpose of them being here? Are they going to respond to some of our questions, or are they just here to listen in? Because seeing that you want us to send questions to the minister, I don't want to send questions. I want to ask direct questions. So are we setting up another date with the minister? Or is there questions that can be answered from his office of those who are currently attending?
I'm just going to take Member Christians before I answer that question. Member Christians?
Chair, I would suggest, can you remember now that the senior procedural officer said that they will liaise with the minister to give us a date? I think we can maybe just keep that questions back, or if you want to send beforehand but I want to agree with the members that he must appear, and that we just get, we can't wait forever, but he must at least give us a date soonest so that we can then engage him. I think we, if it's this week or early next week, then, then we can wait. But we need to hear from the procedural officer, when is the minister available to give us a date? And if it's soon, it's fine. But if it's not soon, we'll have to look at maybe do it in writing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Christians. I'm going to, Member Bartman, if you could make your comment, and then I'm going to ask the senior procedural officer just to comment whether the people are, whether his officials are in the meeting, because I don't see them here. But Member Bartman?
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to support that we call the minister again for another date for the meeting. My understanding is that today's date, the 24th of May, this Wednesday, that we're having this meeting because we got this date from the minister, unless I'm mistaken. And now the minister is not here for the date that he has given us. So if we can please get another date, because reason and purpose behind resolutions that we take as a committee, and given the nature of this committee and the importance of the impact of the Western Cape, it is important that we are able to fulfill and implement those resolutions that we have taken as a committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Klute, if you could just give an answer quickly before we go any further.
Good day, Chairperson, through you. Yes, Member Bartman, the Office of the Minister indicated the 24th of May, but unfortunately, the Minister has been called into a cabinet meeting and thereafter another meeting, the reason for not appearing today. But as I reported previously, she will advise me tomorrow on the revised date when the Minister is available, and I will communicate this to the Chairperson, to all members.
Thank you very much. Yes, Member Kasim and Member Christians, I fully agree that we will ask for another date as soon as possible before the minister can appear before us again. Member Bosman and then Ms. Klute again.
Chairperson, I think we need to just be a little bit cautious and perhaps ask the Minister's office to give us multiple dates, because we have a very tight program and we won't be able to adjust our parliamentary program based on the availability of a minister. So I think maybe more than one date would be the better option to see where it can fit into the parliamentary program. There's quite a bit of legislation that's being processed in this parliament. So that's going to impact when this committee is able.
Respond to Member Kasim. None of the officials of the ministry, office of the ministry, is present in the meeting. They indicate they're not available. So I just wanted to provide clarity on that, Chairperson. And yes, in responding to Member Bosman, previously I indicated, or I gave a list of various dates, especially the dates assigned to the ad hoc committee on energy. But we will give them a list of dates again, and as per usual, liaise with the Office of the Chief Whip and Programming to get these dates approved.
Thank you. Member Murray?
Thank you, Chair. Chair, we must be very careful here. The Premier also had his own plans for the Western Cape in terms of this electricity crisis. Nothing that was said here give me confidence that they will put all sorts of obstacles in our way. We've budgeted 2 billion rand. And I want to know, I just heard from them that they are very limited. They're not allowed to procure new technologies. Even when I spoke about wind technology and solar, they said that they're not allowed, Eskom is not allowed. They must go via a bid process. We want clarity on this. You know, we need to be absolutely sure that now no spokes are going to be put in our wheels when the Western Cape decide to follow our own path to address this issue of electricity. We need rapid answers. We can tell the minister, and what if the minister says he can only see us now in October or November? Are we going to wait, or are we going to come back again here and change what we just decided? We need to move on. This is a crisis. It's a crisis.
Thank you, Member Murray. Yes, indeed. And that's why we'll ask the Minister's office, and we'll task Ms. Klute to ask the Minister's office with 2, as they said, they'll answer tomorrow. But we'll ask for multiple dates so we can have this properly programmed with the programming authority, and we will stress to them the urgency of this matter in making sure that we are fully appraised as to what the national government is doing, as to what Eskom is doing, as we have done now, and we already know what the Premier is doing and the province is doing. So we will await the answer from the Minister's office, hopefully before the end of this week. All right. Members, with your indulgence, we do have minutes of the meeting of the 28th of April that was circulated on Friday. With your indulgence, can I table the minutes and we adopt those minutes as tabled before we go any further?
I propose it be adopted, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Ms. Klute is already flighting these minutes right now. If you could flight the minutes, please. If you could make it a little bit bigger. Okay, thank you very much. Page 1. Thank you so much. Page 2. Page 3. Page 4. And then page 5, this is my signature on it. Can I have a move to adopt the minutes, please? Member Bartman?
Just before I move to adopt, I think it was on page 1, I think Minister Bredell surname has an extra L in it. I think it was a little bit higher at the attendance or at the officials that were part of the meeting. I only saw one L in the surname. And then on, I think it was section 4, because I see on MS Teams member Kasim's surname has an E in it, but in the document there's no E in the surname. So I just wanted to check with member Kasim if she could discuss whether her surname is spelled correctly there. But otherwise, I move for adoption if it's correct. Thank you.
I see there on section 4 on page, on page 4, that it's actually Mr. Kasim, and I know his surname is Cassim. Just want to make sure that
apologies. I just saw.
Yeah. So thank you very much,
Thank you. Anyway.
Member Bodman has moved the minutes. We don't need a seconder, but if anybody so chooses to second.
I second it, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Member Mkondo. Are there any other resolutions and actions that members would like to raise at this point?
Yes, sir.
Yes, Member Marie.
Sir, I am sorry. I'm very concerned that we don't think these things through. We encourage people at the moment to buy inverters, but it works off the grid. The inverter to charge your battery works off the grid. This will again have a supply and demand effect. And then as more people opt for this solution, it's going to create an even bigger challenge to Eskom. Have we thought this through? We need to sit as a committee and show some intellectual ideas and intellectual thought. They encourage people to buy inverters. And these inverters are expensive. And I'm just concerned that it works off the same grid where we are trying to save people charging a lot of batteries, which increase consumption. Now, long before the government's going to wake up again and says, no, we must now ban on inverters or we must charge them a surcharge. I think we need more time to think this through. Hence what I asked, is this the final plan of the minister or what? And they assured me it's the final plan. So where do we go from here?
Thank you, Member Marie, and I'm sure we will have the opportunity to ask him those questions. Member Bosman?
Chair, just like Member Marie is very concerned, I'm also very concerned that you're not able to discern the difference between Member Nkondlo and Member Maseko. And
Sorry,
if I heard correctly, I think Member Maseko was the one who seconded the minutes and not Member Nkondlo, but I'm happy to be corrected.
Thank you. I apologize, Member Maseko. I heard wrong. I must have heard wrong there. Member Nkondlo?
Thank you, Chair. Two proposed resolutions from my side, Chair. One, I think, is to request, I'm not sure whether in our list, we have also included maybe a briefing from DMRE, particularly to hear about the projected bid windows in support of the alternative energy sources, including some of those projects that are already happening within our province. So I would just suggest that at some point we do include the MRE briefing to the committee itself. The other one, Chair, I'm not sure if it would be possible to request ESCOM to give us information as it regards to two things. One, progress update, particularly on the units that they indicated that by December, those units will be restored since they directly impact on the level of building up the requisite capacity. We do need to try and avoid a stage 8. So I'm just suggesting that on one hand, if we can ask ESCOM to give us, even if it's monthly updates, given that the target dates that they've raised in the meeting are up to December this year, with both, I think, Kusile, Mudupi, and even the Quebec steam generator. So maybe they could give us an indication of that, and then also just give us a progress report regarding the battery storage projects that are taking place here in the province, in the three areas that they've mentioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Member Nkudlo. The DMRE1 is in the resolutions that we adopted in the minutes of the previous meeting, so we will just continue with that one. And then your other resolution, thank you so much. Member Bartman.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is actually a not follow-up, but it stems also from the resolutions from the previous minutes. I wanted to find out, given that DMRE is already going to be doing a briefing for us on the particular wind and solar projects, if we could also, for a future meeting, or even in that same meeting, also invite the South African Wind Energy Association, as well as the South African Photovoltaic Industry Association, to give their comments and inputs on those particular renewable type of projects for us. I think if they are able to be in the same meeting, it might be useful for us to be able to compare opinions, but if it's not possible, perhaps then to have a separate session with them. And the second one was similar to Member Kondo's one regarding monthly updates. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Member Bosman.
Chairperson, if I could also ask that we extend an invitation to the Ministry of Environmental Affairs to brief us specifically on the impact of the outstanding environmental impact assessments on the power ships. Now that we've heard in the media that the Department of Transport has given the ships permission to moor off the coast, specifically around the coast of Saldanha. And then also following from the presentation from ESCOM, there was significant reference made to waiting for approvals for the extension of coal-fired power stations, as well as running those power stations at full capacity and the resultant impact that would have on air pollution. So if we could perhaps get an overarching briefing from that department on what the environmental impact of the extended lifespan of aging coal power stations will be, as well as whether there's any environmental work underway that seeks to give more information on the extension of the Koeberg nuclear power station as well, specifically with that license for the nuclear reactor fuel expiring, I think, next month as well. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Member Bosman. If there are there any more resolutions? I see that we also can call, when we call the Department of the Mineral Resources, we can also ask the Minister to come and brief us as well. So maybe we can incorporate that into our request for participation from the department, including the Minister. Members, if there are no further deliberations on the resolutions and we've adopted the minutes of the previous meeting, I would like to thank everybody for their robust discussion right now. I would just like to say that we, for the confirmation of the Office of the Minister of Public Enterprises for our visit to Unkelach on Friday, the 2nd of June. If we don't get it shortly, then we will have to schedule a date on which we can go. And in the same firm that they will be available to brief the committee on Wednesday, the 14th of June. We await for Salga to confirm their attendance to that same meeting as well. Member Maseko?
Chair, please be mindful of the legislation cycle within as you slot in the dates, because there are a lot of us that are not going to be able to attend to this committee if they clash with the legislation. As the legislations, they will take priority.
Thank you. I'm sure Ms. Klute will note that comment and liaise with the program authority accordingly. Thank you, Ms. Klute, for that thumbs up. I appreciate that. All right. I wish to thank all the members for the robust discussion on this very important matter. And you will receive the necessary communication from Ms. Klute when she deliberates with, or when she reaches out to the Minister of Electricity's office and get a couple of dates for when we will hear from the Minister himself. Thank you very much, everybody. This meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Jason. Goodbye.
Bye.